Hang on, now we know how our children feel on virtual technology. Okay, so we're live back on YouTube again. I'm just rebooting to see if it's coming back.
Okay. Okay, David, you're up.
Okay, I think we've got the YouTube feed back up and working now. Apologies for that. Is it coming back? I still see Amy when I go and click over there. I still see Amy.
Me too.
The message I just got as well.
Yep.
Yeah,
you were up.
Not...
You were up briefly, and then it.
I guess we should be grateful it's not looping on me. It could be worse.
It might be working.
John, I like your commentary.
I know.
Oh, are you offering a?
It's just like should be back, like the hopeful should be back on, and then like 5 seconds later, maybe not.
So guys, it is up. It's got a look like a 15-second delay coming through here, but it is up.
Okay, all right. I still have it sitting up on the on my second monitor over there, so I'm going to wait until I see something other than Amy there.
Her commented Amy remix is hilarious. Not what I was looking for today, but that's pretty funny.
Okay, all right. Now you're frozen.
It was back, but now it's frozen again, they're saying.
Yeah, it's.
I have mine.
How many people are we down to on the feed?
I just
50.
see myself still.
Yeah, I mean, I've been rebooting about every 30 seconds and it's coming back here.
Their live dashboard is totally down at this point.
All right. Look, let's.
Yeah, you might have to close.
People like your RBG t-shirt, by the way, Amy.
I'm glad for providing some entertainment.
We're at 55. Let's. Okay, Facebook or Zoom. I don't care which, but let's do one of those. I'm comfortable letting people into the Zoom, and let's give it a go and let's see what happens.
I agree.
I think that's going to be the easiest thing to do. You don't need Zoom. You don't need to have installed Zoom to be able to click in, do you?
No.
Okay,
But they.
let's do that.
So the people are saying once they got out and refreshed that it is working on their end.
Okay. Well, all right.
It's working
I'll
for me.
come
Yeah.
back out one more time and give it a shot.
And I'm watching it. It's just a delay. So I've got
Yeah,
it on here. It's
delay,
just
delay.
delayed.
All right.
Now I see Joe. That's progress.
Yes.
Oh, great.
All right, hang on a second here. Sorry, I'm just gonna. I just want to sort of check that this is. I'd rather take another minute and make sure this is working than.
Yeah, and
Stuff
I have
again.
it. It's on my phone and I'm watching it as well. It's the new
Okay.
content. So
Our numbers seem to be coming back up as well. A
Okay.
few.
All right.
Yeah, I just got another message that is working as well. Everybody seems to be.
So I just
Anything else?
okay. All right. Well, I don't understand then because I just clicked on the link again. Went out and clicked on the link, and I still see Amy up there asking her question.
Still hearing it's not working.
Try completely closing the window out and reopening it.
Yeah, I mean, I mean,
Like
I
not
did.
just refreshing, but completely.
No,
closing it.
I did close the window out and then I went out. So we'll close the Webster Grove School District window out as well then? I guess there's no harm trying that.
I closed the tab, David, and then when I clicked on the link from Board Docs, it worked.
Yeah, that's what I did and I came back with you.
Well, you're just lucky.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, I think we have a different definition of working.
Yeah, the numbers watching continue to rise right now. So it looks like
Well, maybe
it's
it is
starting
coming
to-
back up. Okay. For anybody who's watching and can hear me bemoaning the fact that I can't get on, I apologize. I'll try this one more time and then I'm just going to go. John's just having a field day with this.
Yeah, I think we will have to repeat some things because there are some people asking for.
Okay.
repeated dates and such.
Right, but we think that it's live. Think that it's up.
Yes.
Yeah, because our numbers are definitely going up.
Yeah, you might want to give it a moment.
I'm going
but
to.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. No, I see. I see me, and then I see John, and oh, it's me again. All right. Okay. Well, welcome back. Apologies. We're having more problems with YouTube. Not quite sure what's going on, although we suspect that other activities going on elsewhere on the web may have something to do with YouTube crashing. We were going through questions related to the plan that John and the rest of the administration had posed. And the first question we had, and just to summarize, I think Feli would be saying, do we have teachers able and willing to teach in classes? Is that a fair summary?
It was a bit more general than that. It was, you know, where are they in terms of their comfort level? That was sort of the first part of it. And then the second part of it is, yeah, can we put, do we have enough staff members to teach our kids?
Okay, all right. Dr. Wiley.
Yeah, so it's loaded. We do have a good number of teachers who definitively are ready to get back with kids. They said that even back in August that they were ready. We have met with teachers. We have talked through their concerns. I think the larger part that we're dealing with right now is just the specifics of what will it look like, what are the expectations, and what's going to happen when and if. So to answer your question, staffing wise, yes, I do believe we have enough staff that are able to come back and support our students. It is not a secret. Our substitute pool is not as healthy as it used to be. And quite frankly, we have a good number of subs who prefer not to do virtual. They prefer to be in front of children. And so we have been trying this time that we have been out of the buildings to stay connected with them. We've surveyed them, we've talked with them, we've provided them with some trainings so that when we do come back in person, that they would be, you know, we try to maintain our sub pool. But in totality, we do have a good number of teachers, I think, that are ready to go. We have a number of teachers that are petrified, that are afraid of, but I think, again, if we provide structure and processes and systems, I think that will help. Having not been able to give them much at this point has not been helpful for them in their decision making. And then we have a number of teachers that are just kind of on the fence. And as soon as you tell me what to do and what it'll look like, I can go. But until then, I'm still cautious. So I think it's a mixture, Amy. I can't, you know, give you a definitive yes, everybody's raring to go, because that would not be a true statement. But we do have people that are nervous, but with the right protocols and with the right information, I think, they'll be better, but we just haven't been able to provide them with a lot of that as of yet. And then the date is moved up, right? Like we came and said October 23rd, and here and now it's a little bit sooner. And so they'll heard that wondering why now, and what difference does that make? But we also have on the other side of that coin, families with children who are struggling, who are disengaged, kids who are not turning in work, and or parents that have to work each day and need their kids back in session. So it's a little bit of everything. It's not two sides of that coin, it's more like four of the different perspectives that we're getting. So I do think we'll be okay workforce wise. I do worry substitute wise, but I know that DESE and the state are working to help us develop that sub pool. I think once we get people in this phase in process, it'll help, right? With people kind of easing into it. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, no, you did as best as it's possible to answer that question.
Yeah.
So are you getting that information sort of, piecemeal, word of mouth, or have you done a formal survey as to how staff feel about returning sooner than anticipated?
We did not do a formal survey asking that question. We are getting this. We met with K2 teachers. We also I met with the issues where you were part of the issues committee. I've also been doing road shows where this topic has come up in a couple, and we've been face to face with teachers having this conversation. And more of their questions are more about what is it going to look like when this happens? What are you going to do? Like, who's going to make this decision? How does that feel? So I think they have more questions, which is adding to the anxiety. And I think the more we can provide to them, which whatever decision we're making tonight, the better. But no, we did not formally survey staff to see if they were, how they felt about an earlier return. We did not.
But at the same time, they're not hearing this for the first time tonight.
That is correct. They are
Okay.
not.
Yeah.
No.
All right.
Amy, we met with, we had a K through 2 meeting that had a representative from each of the schools on the call, each of the grade levels, each of the schools, as well as specialists from the school, counselors from schools, like a sampling of all those different other specialists, and provided them with a presentation, asked them, what can we do to support a transition? To Sandy's point, we never asked, do you want to come back or don't you? We did ask what we can do to support the transition. I think our adult population is no different than the adult probably of any kind of organization or what districts have experienced in terms of varied levels of readiness. We didn't have, when we asked the staff, there was nobody on that particular K through 2 call who expressed like, no, I don't want to come back, or apprehension. There were people who said, can we have some more time to get ready? There were some people that said, can we start sooner? Do we have to wait till October 14th? And so it was kind of a mixed response, similar to kind of what we've seen all along. But again, we kind of all the factors that go into decision making, it's important to listen and learn from our staff, to provide them with, again, expectations, clarity of protocols, the time to prepare, because that's one thing that I know a lot of people have reached out to me is, why so quick, or why not quicker? If you say it's safe, why can't we do it? And it's all part of that, making sure we're preparing for the staff, but also caring for our adults as well. And so I feel good about that. All the staff expressed, regardless of where they were, again, none saying they didn't want to come back that we spoke to. They all want to be with their kids as soon as possible. Like Sandy said, it's just like, questions like, okay, so can I still do small group? Like, we've worked to try and organize kids to engage in this learning that's so relational. How can I do that? And it's like, well, so we have to have kind of a little bit of what are all the different protocols and guidelines we could have? Because we got a distance, we're going to have these masks, but how can we help them with some of those more practical matters as they're processing how learning is going to be different than the last time they were in their spaces with kids. So, but it's been different for the past 6 weeks, 7 weeks, and it's just another adjustment.
Yeah. Can I originally, David, can I go ahead and make a comment, and then I promise I'll shut up temporarily?
Yes, go for it.
So I was just going to say, in terms of, what I'm feeling at this point is, I don't think that we would be kidding ourselves if we didn't think that there's a real chance that people are going to get sick. We don't know who, we don't know what that's going to look like for them. I am appreciative of the fact that it is a voluntary decision to send your kids back to school at this point, less so for our teachers. That said, I feel so much better about the plan that the district has in place now than where we were before school started in August. It's just clearly the issues that many of us have raised, the concerns that people have raised have been thought through. And we can't guarantee everybody's safety, of course, but I feel much, much better about our ability to make school as safe as possible for those who choose to come back. That's all.
Okay, thank you. So John, just before I take any more questions, you mentioned that you had these meetings with the teachers, teacher representatives, and you'd mentioned sort of, one of the questions that came up. Any other key points that came up that were of concern to the teachers that you could share with us?
So yeah, so we had some. Jason, can you think of any, or any of my team members, can you think of any? I'm accessing a Google Doc where we took very good notes.
Yeah, so to jump in, a lot of the themes that I felt like were reoccurring in some of these conversations were more procedural. So what does it look like to line up a group of kindergartners? What does it look like to maintain a seating chart where students are used to being able to sit and move wherever they want? How do I pull a small group of students? Can I pull a small group of students? How do students play a math game with each other? Can I engage one-on-one with a student? What does it look like moving down the hallway? What does lunch look like? Where do students sit? So a lot of logistical types of questions that continue to surface. Also from specialists in terms of, can we utilize the PE equipment? Can we share supplies in the art classroom? So just a lot of planning type of questions that I would classify them. And then also just questions regarding, face coverings and how to navigate that, recess, PPE, and what we would be providing in terms of those things. So some general themes, but a lot of just logistics types of questions.
Yeah, he's right. That's what they were.
All right, thank you. All right, Christine, do you have any questions?
I do. First, thanks, John, for the clarification of why 5-day over hybrid for K through 2. I think that's really helpful. And the facilities information was really helpful as well. And the fact that you reserve the right to be flexible, because above all, I think all of us want kids to be in the classroom, but we also want to keep kids and everybody in the building safe. And so thumbs up to that.
Yep.
Now, one of the things I heard you clearly say since August was that masks are key, and I hear non-negotiable mask wearing. So what happens if a kiddo cannot wear a mask? Because I know that's going to impact contact tracing. And then if I could ask a second part to that question, it's that we're putting a lot of trust in our parents. And so how is the district going to communicate effectively just how serious it is that they always wear masks, that they socially distance themselves from others if their kids are returning to the classroom, as well as keep kids home if they have COVID-19 symptoms?
So I think in terms of mask usage, we have, again, that's the game changer with all things. And so the expectation is going to be that people wear masks. Now there could be a circumstance where somebody can't, like I've heard of situations where people are bringing in doctor's notes and such. And a lot of doctors have really pushed back on doctors that are writing notes in some circumstances. I'm not a medical expert. We'll have medical experts weigh in. The beauty at this point is we have another option. So if you can't wear a mask, we have another option for you to be educated. And so we'll face any extraordinary circumstances with respect and care for both the person or the family that's saying such, but then also we have an obligation to keep our staff and all the other kids safe. And in terms of the communication with families, it's going to have to be just a repeated message. And again, I have gotten legal opinion from Doug that if, for example, if we have somebody that's not wearing a mask, that they're essentially self-selecting a virtual program. We have an option. We can place them in that setting. Now, are we going to do that with the first time an anxious 5-year-old pulls down their mask real quick? No, we'll be rational about it. We'll be reasonable about it. But that safety piece is going to be critically important. And again, it's the education of the parents. No Tylenol, no Advil to bring that temperature down. And I do feel that again, majority of people are going to be in compliance, or there are going to be situations maybe where they're not, possibly with 4,700 kids. But I think we're going to have to be very intentional. We're going to have to be stern at times. And again, if somebody is not able to comply with our measures to keep our kids safe, our adults safe, then they're selecting a virtual program for their families. So it's going to have to be the repeated record. We've talked about that, the over communication. We're in the process of debating, which, you know, a daily, some districts do a daily text message regarding the criteria, the screening criteria. We have some parents that would be okay with that. We had some that would not like that. So, but those are things that we're considering given the gravity of the situation, the importance of the safety.
Thank you. So if this is passed, then parents have 2 weeks to get their kiddos used to wearing masks.
Yeah.
So I can appreciate that.
Yeah.
I heard the health department information and saw the dashboard was by district. And I'm wondering if you could clarify, with HIPAA laws being what they are, how will staff be notified if COVID is in the building? That would include students, that would include teachers and other staff who are cleaning the building. And in terms of everybody entering that building, even staff who don't work consistently in that building, but who travel between buildings.
Yeah. Sandy, do you want to answer this one?
Yes, so Christine, it's and this is the $1 million question, and I wish I had a clear, direct answer. So if I don't answer it directly, just let me know and I'll try it again. But we're going to take each COVID case by case, each scenario by scenario, that through that contact tracing process, which is very tedious, and but you have to be very explicit. So if you do in fact have a COVID case for a student or for an adult, our first step is going to be to call St. Louis County Health Department. They have been very clear about their expectations on what we need to communicate, and that we do in fact have to communicate. St. Louis County has also provided some guidelines that is actually different from what the state requires and even the CDC. But one of those guidelines is you have to have a permission through a form to re-enter. So if a person tests positive, we have to get a clearance from the county that they can return to work or return to school. As a part of that, St. Louis County has also advised us that they will let us know about who quarantines, how long they would quarantine, and then who should receive those messages. So a part of that diagram, there was verbiage in there about close contact or direct contact. And so if you and I are in a space and I didn't have my mask on, you didn't have your mask on, you were clearly a direct contact if I test positive. And so of course you will be contacted via phone because you would be a part of that contact tracing process. But let's say Alan was 7 rooms down the hall on a completely different floor. He may not need to be notified phone contact, right? Because he didn't have any direct contact with me. So St. Louis County will help us determine, they call them levels, level 1. So you would be a level 1, your family, your husband, your spouse, your children will be considered level 2, right? And then maybe Todd, because he's at another floor, could be considered a level 3. And so they will advise us on how to communicate to the different levels. And we of course will take that back and determine as a district how we plan to do that. And so that contact tracing, right, will let us know who was in the building. Was this the day for the speech path to be in the building? We're asking for teachers to do seating charts for kids to be lined up in a certain way each time. And of course, when adults enter the building, the office will have note of that so that when we do contact trace, we'll know who to contact if they do share a building, and then what type of communication they get. So some people will receive a phone call, direct phone call from the district. Some people will receive an email, and some people may not get any notification at all if there was, depending upon their level of contact with that person, but it's going to be case by case each time. Did I answer that?
Yeah, no, I got an email from a teacher who's worried because she would want to know if somebody had COVID in the building.
And I understand that 100%. There are going to be some cases where the teachers will know, regardless of the contact. But there are going to be some cases where, again, is it imperative for a teacher that's on the ground level who came in, the side door was there for 30 minutes and left back out but tested positive? Is it imperative that the entire building knows, right? And so that's the information that we have to weigh with each other, and then also with St. Louis County. They'll advise us on that because the FERPA guidelines are very clear and specific on what we can say and how. So we have talked about it as an administrative team, regardless of the scenario. Will we send out communication and say someone was in your building that had COVID, right? Is that something that we would do or not? And I think we're still kind of deciding that firmly. But again, the question is for those individuals, because I've talked to some staff members who unfortunately did get the virus and were very nervous about people even knowing, because that's the first thing people do was jump on the phone and say, who was it? Was it you? Was it Sandy? Was it Christine? Was I around them? And so it creates this really kind of, I'm going to use the term unhealthy, it may not be the best term, environment, because then now my business is out there that Sandy got COVID, right? Because somebody is texting and passing that information on. And so everybody wants to know, and I get that, and no one's meaning harm, but it is creating a situation for the individual that tests positive. So I can't say definitively for each case that everyone in the building will be notified, but I can say definitively that the county health department will give us that advice on who to advise and when, and that's the advice that we're going to follow.
Okay. And I can assume that the janitors would know.
The custodian, yes. So if my class, if I tested positive, room 001, the custodians would know there is a special cleaner that would need to come in. They would have to come in, wait 24 hours, go in, clean and disinfect that space with this special cleaner before someone else can enter that space. So there is a process that we'll follow. And then where did I go? Did I go into the main office? Did I go into the teacher's lounge? Those spaces would need to be disinfected as well. But that's that contact tracing that will let us know what to do.
Okay.
Well, and the different teachers and staff that would be working with that child throughout the day. So if that child was in different spaces, because that would be an important part of that contact tracing, was making sure that that the seating charts were followed, that there were that child wasn't leaving to go get a drink, or, you know what I'm saying, especially with our younger kids, but with all of our students. So there would be a number of people that would have to support that process. They wouldn't lead it, but they'd have to be supporting, just to make sure that we had a clear understanding of who those possible exposures could have been with, and report that accurately to St. Louis County. Because in the event that that can't clearly be done, then that broader communication is going to have to be made. So
yeah, I took my younger daughter, I took both my daughters to get flu shots, and I said, don't touch anything. And then I look over, and then one of them plops down in a chair, and I said, don't touch anything. So I can't imagine watching 20 kids going down the hallway and not assume they're like touching it. I guess I would just have to say, just assume there's COVID in the building at all times and be careful.
So I'm going to.
I just have one more question.
Well, okay, but all right. I mean, I'm trying to make sure that all the board members get a chance to
Sure.
ask. Okay, Keita.
These are kind of more thinking outside the box questions. Are there, as far as bringing all the kids back, like when we get to that point, an adventure club, has there been any type of communication, maybe with like area churches or any other places that might be able to help us with space issues, like say even for adventure club, or with the possibility of holding smaller classes at some of the churches so that we can still has there been any kind of, is that a possibility? Is that not something that we could look into?
Keita, we'll return to that depending on kind of what we're able to problem solve with Adventure Club. I had met with a number of local churches leadership on Zoom very, very early on, and there was a willingness and a readiness to support us. Now, a lot of those churches still aren't back in session, so they couldn't necessarily commit to it right away. Had to think through some of the different legal ramifications, staffing situations, making sure that our kids aren't going to be exposed to who are all the adults in the churches, like things like that to keep them safe. But those are the kind of things that we're going to have to problem solve within our setting and possibly go outside. So we have explored that and may return to that for space needs.
Okay. My next is I really just have another comment rather than a question.
Okay, that's fine.
My questions seem to be answered. I mean, have been asked by my fellow board members, which is good. I just ask that our parents and our people in the community, if we do vote to go forward with this, that you please be considerate and please follow the protocols at home and when we're not in school. I mean, you are the ones asking to go back early. I mean, obviously we want kids in the buildings as much as possible, but you know, we have to, it's about being considerate to others. And let's think about our teachers and let's think about the other people. And just please, as we're doing this, please be considerate and please talk to your kids. I know you are, but let's just please, instead of this monstrous push to let's hurry up and get back to normal, we're not getting back to normal. This is going to be a new normal. So let's, you know, kind of get with and stay with that program and be considerate of the safety of others. And that's it.
Thank you. Joe?
So I'm just curious, are we, when kids come to school, is there going to be a screening or can we take it their temperature? Are we doing anything like some places you go, do screen people as they come in the door?
At this point with our kids, or Sandy, you can jump in.
Go. Nope.
At this point with our kids, we won't be screening them at the school. If we'll do something at home, still kind of determining different recommendations for medical people, whether that's, again, the physical screening every single day, or is that just the expectations? Again, there are different schools from thoughts on the experts regarding that and the fidelity of it, which makes sense to me. So there is going to be, again, that communication, that expectation, but in terms of for in-person learning, would we do it? Would we do it? We will not do it. Now, will we have different checks in place at schools? Will people be monitoring for this on a regular basis as kids enter the building? All these things? Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And I guess the other thing, I was just going to comment in terms of the masks, I will say that I see that the preschoolers walking through the neighborhood every day, little, whatever, 2-3-year-olds wearing their masks. So I don't think it's a lot to ask for people want to come back to school that you got to wear a mask. So
I agree. Thank you.
That's all I got.
Alan? Oh, sorry, Alan?
Thank you, David. And Dr. Simpson, your team, thank you guys all for the hard work and time and planning you put into these plans. It's very much appreciated. We can tell how much work and planning went into it. So thank you to you and your team and the teachers and everyone that provided input. It's very much appreciated. I wanted to ask a question first about when you talked about some of the sanitation process and the cleaning and that sort of thing. Wanted to talk a little bit more specifically about some of the buildings. I know that you mentioned changing air filters and those sorts of things. Knowing that this is an airborne virus, do we have HEPA filters for our buildings? Have we been able to secure things like that? For our HVAC systems, wanted to talk a little bit about and hear about sort of the air exchange rates and some, because knowing that it's an airborne virus, even things like the ability to all the classrooms have the ability to keep windows open, those sorts of things, just to talk about airflow and ventilation in all the spaces. I think that's a really important component.
Pam, can you take that?
Yep. Yeah, so good questions. Couple of things we're considering besides just the changing the filters would be that the systems will come on earlier than normal. So they start circulating that air and they're turning the air over in the classrooms. We do, as you mentioned, we have some classrooms that do not have windows that could be open periodically. So we've encouraged our building leadership, if they can, if there's another area that person could go to, that they try to switch classrooms. For instance, if there is a teacher that'll be teaching virtually, and then another teacher with a classroom of kiddos. Maybe they could swap rooms, since only one person in the room is different than having 20 bodies in a room. So those are the things that we're looking at.
Okay. How about, do any of the rooms have plexiglass barriers or anything like that?
Yeah, that's another thing that we're considering. We have purchased plexiglass barriers for all of the teachers who do like the reading interventionists that are more one-on-one. And we are looking, I had a vendor bring me some samples today. We're looking at some other barriers that could be used in the classroom, for instance, on the elementary teacher at their kidney-shaped table that they could use so they would still be able to work closely with students.
Okay. Also, sort of along the same lines, thinking about, you know, some of these small kiddos, do we have signage or things that can go in like hallways and rooms just to sort of remind them what 6 feet looks like? Because some of them at that age may not have a good concept of what that is.
Yes, we do. The buildings have a lot of signage in place already. We've ordered that, 6 weeks or so ago. Many of them had it for several weeks. So we have signs that say, like you said, a place on the floor where to stand so you know where 6 feet is. We have signs reminding us that we need to social distance, signs reminding us to wear masks. We have signs for the drinking fountains that they're not to be used for drinking out of, only using to fill water bottles with. I think that's all I can think of. I feel like I'm forgetting something right now, but yes, we do have signage in the building.
All right. I'm going to do the same thing to you I did to Christine, Alan.
Okay.
Alex.
Sure. Start with quarantine question. What do kids do while in quarantine? Same with teachers. If a teacher has to quarantine, what's the process? And you know, are they in virtual then? Like, how's that work?
So it depends. So I'm going to kind of talk. I know you guys don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to try to answer as short as I can. So when a child or an adult goes out on kind of this precautionary quarantine, that means I'm out because I have a symptom. I don't know if it's COVID or not. Then the teacher will provide work just as if the kiddo was out, if they had strep or something like that. That would kind of be your typical process. If the teacher is at home and is able to work, he or she could still work remotely, or we would provide a substitute, just depends. So for those long-term for teachers, should we need to, then we have aides and or other staff that could fill in. We are increasing our everyday sub pool as well to provide that support if a teacher's going to be out for a long period of time, or the teacher could continue to teach virtually, and we're talking through that technology to see. As far as kiddos, the same could be the case, right? If some kiddos are going to be out 10, 14, upwards of 20 days, then you, of course, you're going to have to provide something virtually, potentially, if the child is able to, right? If the child is well enough to do the work. So I think it's going to depend on if the child is well enough to do the work or not. They've also talked about learning packets, maybe creating learning packets to send home. But we're going to have to gauge that to see if the doctor is releasing them to be medically well enough.
Jason, was there
Thanks.
anything you wanted to add, or?
No, actually, Sandy did a great job. Thank you,
Yeah.
Sandy.
Another question about students, if they are pulled out of class for reading specialists or whatever, how is that going to look in this environment?
Sure. So part of what we are looking at, we're trying to minimize mixing of cohorts. So mixing of all the third grade rooms, et cetera. So in that situation for like reading intervention, we would try our best to pull students from the same homeroom. So they would go to the same group from other students that they're already associating with within their classroom. There are some situations such as special education services, such as perhaps gifted education services, where there may be one student who's in a homeroom. And so it's not possible to provide that group interaction for that one student in order to be able to not mix the cohorts. So in that situation where we have, one student in Mr. So-and-so's classroom who needs gifted and talented services, and we have another student in Mrs. So-and-so's classroom, in that situation, we would limit how we would mix those two students into the same group to still allow that social emotional interaction. But within the gifted setting, there would be all of the protocols in place, and we would even go to the extreme of they would be even more in terms of the social distancing measures, monitoring that they're not leaving and returning to their classrooms at the exact same time, so they're not walking in the hallways together, to try to avoid as much as possible the mixing of students amongst the different homerooms. But there will be situations in order to provide the level of programming that we need to do for students where there will have to be some degree of that, but our goal is to minimize that as much as possible.
Just kind of wanted to add that when we spent time in the K-5 buildings, K-6 buildings on Friday, each and every one of them, and just kind of looking at them through the lens of the space and the kids and the programming. And we visited a number of like rooms for interventionists, and just again, being mindful of windows, circulation, again, programming. I know you've always taught at this table, but you can't have the spacing that you need at this table. So what are the different solutions that we need to think of in order to provide that programming? Is there going to be something where there's going to be, I as a teacher or I as a member of a team are going to have to make contact with students? So what level of PPE do those people need if they're going to have to be able to make some level of contact? Because that would be different than people who are not going to have that. So thinking through all those kind of scenarios, again, some of it's programmatic, like it's going to have to look a little bit differently. And I think we'll be able to do a good job with that. We'll make the best of the situation. Always mindful of the safety of our kids and staff.
Okay. I'm going to go back to Christine, who you had another question.
I do, and a statement, if that's okay, because I just thought of it.
Let's go for it.
So inequities. I've heard that students might be asked to bring an extra batch of supplies to school so that home supplies stay at home and school supplies stay at school. And I would hope that you could reach out to the PTOs or the equity groups to help coordinate with that need.
So our schools will all be purchasing those supplies at school. We will not be asking parents to purchase 2 sets.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. And then I hear to the extent possible in terms of social distancing. And I remember where we were 2 years ago learning about overcrowded classrooms. And so how will, as a family member, would I be notified if, for example, I see 25, 28, 26 kids in my child's responsive classroom, and then they're moving into a classroom, and I'm probably talking higher grades here than K-2, and so if that's something to be answered later, that's okay.
Yeah, I'll just go ahead and respond because that was one of the things we were looking at. Is when we walked around, we actually carried the spreadsheet that looks at all the number of children in the responsive learning, the number of people in the virtual learning. And then we asked principals to, where are the spaces that you're concerned about based on the numbers, based on the no windows, based on these things. And they had already done some advanced thinking, and also a lot of them kind of solution minded with those. And so there won't be a situation, and we have very few classes where at our elementary where we may have to relocate or switch around. There may be some situations, very few, where we have to use spaces that are typically used as common spaces, larger spaces, because of the size. And so we feel confident about our ability to distance in those spaces. So if I'm in one of those classes that has a bigger group, there's a possibility that maybe I'm now in the cafeteria, or maybe my class is now in the library. And so there would be some level of notification to those families, hey, to keep your kids safe, to keep the adults safe, we had to really relocate you to the space. We're going to make it as ideal a setting as possible. So we would make sure that they were notified, but our commitment to the spacing will definitely not be compromised, because you're right, there are some classes that ended up getting bigger than is typically Webster Groves School District sizes. Not many, but there are some and that are requiring special consideration. We're also, if the need exists, which will largely be a teacher directed decision or ask or whatever, if they need a little bit of additional time for that relocation, we'll have people on hand to help. But that's a whole new layer of stress and work on those teachers. We would give them that bonus time to account. Probably would be just a day, just because we have kids that need them, but just mindful of that, the effect of that move on their everything.
Thanks, John. And again, thanks to your team.
Yep. Thank you.
Alan, did you have another question?
I do, thank you. So I believe it was at the last board meeting, we talked a little bit about testing and sort of the importance of that to contact tracing and sort of what that looked like. And you had mentioned, I think it was Limburg, Dr. Simpson, you had mentioned that they had a specialty, I don't know if it was a clinic or whatever, doing testing for them. Have we considered something like that for Webster Groves as well?
Yeah, Pam, do you want to jump in on this one? You were taking the lead on that.
Yeah, so we've been contacting some different companies, and there's one that will work with school districts. They are close to their capacity, and then the other issue we had with them is that they are not close. They're about 12 miles away, so they are still an option. They would be there if, let's say, the HR department had a question about a specific situation. They could answer that, and then they could do the rapid testing. There's another group that I've been talking to the last couple of days that they will do the rapid testing, and you can reserve tests, so you don't have to worry about if there's a test shortage later, but it costs $275 per test. And we found that there has come up here just recently some of the urgent care centers that are doing the rapid test. And then our insurance covers that for free. So right now we're kind of on hold to see if we have any other or better options that come our way.
Okay, yeah, thank you for looking into that. I think that's so important to our contact tracing. And so for me, I think I just have a comment now, David. So I think one of the most important things about making this decision is the communication around it, the communication of whatever decision we make. The communication, as Christina mentioned about a potential positive, just sort of thinking about that communication and what it looks like. Thinking about the communication to families that maybe, you know, Dr. Simpson, you'd mentioned the higher number of parents that had made the decision to homeschool, you know, communication to families like that might be interested in coming back. So I think having a communication plan around this decision and sort of what we're making and what we're doing is so incredibly important that I just would like to see the district put a lot of special time and energy into that communication plan, because I think the public is going to be expecting that.
Thank you.
Alex, I cut you off as well. Did you have another question?
Yeah, so regarding Adventure Club, I know, you know, is that something, I think you mentioned it, is it something that we're going to still try to have for the families that need that? And then how, like, what are the thoughts on how we're going to do that differently and make sure that's safe?
So it's a goal that we're working towards. Again, looking at the inequities, we have parents, you know, we have some situations where kids are at home. Kids would have the ability to have somebody pick them up and watch them at their house for different reasons. We have some children that are in different daycare centers, childcare centers, whose parents are relying on the care there. So it is our goal for equity reasons to try and to get that. Again, it's going to be a big challenge. So the goal would be to, like what we said, our ability to cohort is going to be important. So our ability to keep the number of contacts as small as possible. So again, it's a goal that we're going to have to work towards. And how do you do that? You know, because you're also going to have the priority of making sure these spaces require this special sanitation every night. So there's a lot of different factors, you know, and again, it's not necessarily easy to know which are the families that have the greatest need for it. But it's something that we're going to work towards. We feel like we need to offer it, and just what's the safest, our ability to do that. Similar to the substitute situation, Adventure Club is also a difficult group to staff. We've faced that a lot. So some of it's going to be, so there's decisions are going to factor into it. Of course, the health and safety is going to be first, the spacing, the staffing, those are going to be some challenges. So again, the team at the Adventure Club team is already starting to think through some of these things. There are districts that are doing it. There's districts that are not. Contacting people that are, like, what's the best that you can do. So it won't be the expansive service that we're typically able to provide. But again, we've got to be able to say, I know this second grader was here by this person in the event, and really minimizing those amount of touches as best we can. So we talked about, God, wouldn't it be ideal if maybe, you know, one staff member, if you had a bunch of kids in a single class. We asked people in advance of when we were planning, you talk about the level of detail that we tried to do in advance of the first day of school, thinking through kids who are in Adventure Club, trying to place them in the same class, like that type of thinking. Now, we weren't mindful of anything more than the kids who were signed up. So Alex, I'm talking a lot to it, but we're kind of just in the real initial stages of that, and really looking to try and provide that for as many families as we can safely do.
Yep, totally understand. Quick comment, David.
Yeah, go.
So first, I do want to thank the members of the community for all the emails and the comments. What I'd say is, don't stop with us. The reason that kind of we're in this decision, we're faced with this decision today is because at the national level, the state level, the county level, there has been no decision that has been made. There's been guidance. It's been just that. It's been guidance in which Dr. Simpson and administrators have had to interpret and determine what's best for the students and the staff. While our district leaders are absolutely trained to deal with crisis situations, they are not trained to deal with pandemics. So this is new territory. We realize there's no perfect plan or option at this point, but we're doing all that we can. I know the district leaders are doing all that they can to provide the best education in the safest possible environment. And then finally, I want to thank Dr. Simpson and administrators and staff for working extremely long hours since March at trying to figure out how to solve this issue and how to get students back in school, and if not, how to get them the best education they can, because they've been working tirelessly. So I think, I hope that's apparent, but if not, I just wanted to say that.
Thank you very much.
You're here, Alex.
Any other board members have any other questions?
Actually, I have what will hopefully be a quick question, and
Absolutely.
I hope I didn't miss the answer. Is there a plan or anything to be flexible? God forbid a student tests or teacher tests, and there has to be quarantine issues. Are there any plans for grading flexibility and things of that nature? And also coming back for some of the kids who have struggled and really had some issues, is there going to be any kind of grading flexibility or second chance? I don't know which second chances, what you'd like to call it, as they come back.
Jason, do you want to answer that? That's something I haven't thought of, Keita.
So Keita, just to respond to that, in terms of grading, especially at the secondary level, because it is tied to credit and it's tied to course offerings, there really can't be a degree of flexibility. So it does have to be completed within the time frame of that course. Part of, though, what we've been thinking as far as that asynchronous time as part of the learning monitoring program really is to provide that flexibility so students have time to catch up if they're behind in assignments, or students can, if they've been lacking in participation or the engagement, as we were talking about it earlier, an opportunity for them to be able to have additional adult support. Our principals are monitoring that piece, but obviously that does look different at a secondary level compared to what it does at a kindergarten or first grade level. Obviously, we'll take all of our students as they are and do our best to work with families to best support them. That could look like more kids receiving additional reading services at the younger levels. It could look like students receiving additional math support. And so part of this isn't just a quick response. Part of this is a long-term piece that we have to look at. But to simply answer your question about the grading piece, especially at the high school level, there's only so much flexibility that we have in terms of a student needs to be able to complete the course, a student needs to be able to get that credit moving forward. Our teachers will work as best as they possibly can, and our principals will work as best as they possibly can to partner with families to try to provide accommodations and support kids and families as much as possible. I hope that answers your question.
It does. I mean, I knew there wouldn't be like a solid, we're going to do A, B, and C. I just was hoping that, especially for instance, if you're in the middle and the teacher, if there's a quarantine situation, then you have a possible chain reaction, of kids being out, the teacher being out, and in addition to just coming back all together. So I figure that kids are going to be all over the places.
Well, and part of that planning is really focusing on what are the core priorities for that course, what are the core priorities for that content area, and making sure that our students are going to the next course or the next grade level with those secure pieces in place. That may not mean that we get to our favorite activity that we always do in second grade if it's not tied to certain standards. We're really focusing on those priority pieces so that we are making sure that our students are moving to the next grade level.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yep.
And thanks to all of you for all of this, by the way. Just saying,
other questions from other board members? If not, I have a couple of questions. So first, one thing that was raised to me, one of the issues with the virtual learning is children sitting in one place for extended periods of time in front of a screen. And so now, obviously, when they're in the classroom, they're going to need to sit largely in one place in a classroom. What are you able to do, and especially, obviously, again, for the youngest kids, what are you able to do to allow them to sort of to move around a little bit, just so that they're not sort of sat rooted for hours on end?
Good question. I think a few things. First of all, we're going to encourage our staff to go outside with kids as much as they possibly can, regardless of what they teach, just to be out in the fresh air. This is something that I would encourage them to do anyways, anytime they have an opportunity. But now it's kind of a dual purpose as well. So encouraging them to get out. Our staff, when you go into their classrooms, a lot of times you'll see them doing brain breaks, and the kids will be doing their wiggles and their dancing. So they'll maximize those opportunities to get them to moving around a little bit. They'll be as mindful. It is a challenge, David. I mean, that's something that kids are going to get less movement within the environment, again, in support of what we're trying to accomplish. So I think creating those structured breaks, allowing for that unstructured, just being outside, being a kiddo, will be really important. And again, that's kind of the effort of the presentation before, is also being mindful of just the time and the breaks that are needed for people in the virtual space, whether they're part of the responsive learning or the virtual learning program. Okay. Adults too, not just the kids.
Absolutely. I mean, you only have to look here. I mean, I can't sit still for more than 5 minutes at a time either. I mean, I completely understand that. Different question, and again, something that's been raised to me. Do you think there is a need for a Webster Grove School District COVID task force? I know that you have staff who are part of task force already. Do you think there's a need that the school district has one of our own to include our stakeholders?
I don't personally feel that. I feel if that's something, the direction the board wanted to head, we could. To your point, we're all involved in a lot of different groups and a lot of different task force and consulting with a whole lot of people. And so I at this point, I don't know what the outcome would be or what we would hope to that task force, what decisions they would make. Again, we've connected with teachers throughout the process, staff throughout the process, medical experts and advisory people throughout the process, health department throughout the process. But if it's something that the board wanted us to do, we could do it, especially with some clear direction of what the outcomes would be for that group.
I certainly, I'd be interested in other board members' feelings. I mean, personally, it's more, it was a question that I had been asked. I didn't have an answer to. I wasn't aware particularly as to the task forces that you and your team were already in. My personal feeling is that you probably don't need another sort of set of meetings that you need to prepare for. What you need to be able to do is to sort of have the time to go and respond real time to things that are going on. So I'd welcome any other board members' thoughts if they feel differently, but for me, I don't see it as being a particular priority. The one last thing I had, and I apologize, I think you may have covered it before. We're asking staff to shift from a completely virtual model, which they've had to sort of go and set up everything there, and we're asking them to move now into an in-class model. What sort of time are you going to give them in order to, and obviously the classroom is going to look very different if they're teaching there on their own for virtual than if they're having students coming in. What sort of time are you going to give them to prepare for that transition?
Well, for first, again, giving them notice of 2 weeks is what I've said to them. Again, I've stressed flexibility, but I just want to give them as much notice as possible just for their own thinking on it and planning, because our teachers work hard. And so while their hours are extending beyond their typical days for many of them at this point, they'll want to start thinking and planning for that in person. And then the setting aside of the 2 days. So all of the tentative start times that we have right now, the one that we're asking for approval tonight, the possibilities for the subsequent ones are Wednesdays. And so we would give them the Mondays and the Tuesdays for preparation.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I sort of thought I'd heard you say that, and I apologize.
Okay.
I thought I was probably repeating myself.
It's okay.
Any other board members have either any comments on anything that's been raised here, anything else they want to raise, any statements that they want to make?
I saw just in some of the YouTube comments that someone was asking about transportation. Did we cover buses or any kind of other transportation, or is that something?
It's in our plan, but Pam can hop on and speak to that. It wasn't in our presentation tonight, though. But Pam, you want to touch on that?
Yeah, so in our plan, we have laid out that when the students load the buses, they'll go to the back first. So they'll load in the back to the front. When they get off the bus, they'll get off, the kids in the front will get off first, and then the students in the back will get off last. They will wear masks the whole time. We will have the assigned seating. We will only, where our goal is to have one, sorry, I feel like I'm cutting out, one person per seat unless they're family members or household members, and we could have more than one per seat. But it'll also just depend on how many students we have sign up to ride the buses. So Edgar Road and Clark will be, if this gets approved tonight, we'll be reaching out to families tomorrow to find out how many of them still want to receive bus services. And then we will plan accordingly from there. We will also keep the windows down on the buses with weather permitting.
And I assume the routes would be the same as they were before.
Yes.
And we'll again encourage, like, please do this if the need exists, trying to encourage. If you don't, it's not necessary. But yeah, that opportunity will still exist, and that will be the same for our students who participate in the voluntary transfer program. Same thing, some of the same regulations, same protocols, and everything like that. And our students have been accessing that for like athletic and activities successfully.
Thank you.
Same in place for our students who are currently homeless. Again, transportation for them, whether it's the bus, whether it's the other mode. So yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, so we have a recommendation out there. So one question that was raised to me by a few board members was whether we actually needed to take an action formally, or whether the motion that we previously passed was one that would allow Dr. Simpson to move forward as he saw was appropriate. I thought that it was probably best this was sort of a sufficiently different approach than we had initially outlined. I thought it would be a better idea that the board give specific direction to the administration. And so in the motion that is proposed there, we both give specific direction, both in terms of K through 2 and then in terms of the other children, but then also give Dr. Simpson, if things do happen to change, the ability to take actions quickly as he sees fit, and then he can bring those back. Subsequent to him doing that, he could bring those back to the next board meeting. But so he won't have to actually reach out to the board to take these actions. So first, I just ask. I mean, anybody have any strong feelings in terms of whether we should be looking at a motion, or whether that's not necessary?
I just wanted to reiterate in the motion would also be, you could trust as typical that I would not, for a big decision like this, even though would give me the authority to do so, but not maybe through a meeting or an approval, that I would definitely reach out to you in advance of this decision and the rationale for. So I think that's probably assumed and known, but I just wanted to vocalize that.
I think if we didn't trust you to make decisions when you need to on the fly and make the right decisions, we've got the wrong person in the job, and that's clearly not the case.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
So would that extend to, I know you mentioned, hey, if things go well, the high school, bring that back at a, actually setting a time frame for that and maybe bringing it back at some point. So is that your thought, or would that be?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So it further, the board approves a return to in-person learning for students currently in responsive learning in grades 3 to 8 as soon as Dr. Simpson believes this is appropriate, with no further board action required.
It's in the board. It's in the board.
I don't know that a motion is necessary. I think John's heard and his team they've heard our thoughts and concerns, and nobody, so far as I can tell, is jumping up and down and screaming, "Don't do it," which isn't to say we don't have concerns, but we trust John and his team.
So, all right. I mean, I'd say, I'm open. We can either. Well, I guess first and foremost, I haven't heard anybody who objects to the ideas that Dr. Simpson has proposed. I think everybody is in, with requiring suitable sort of care and attention. Everybody believes that this is the right way forward, and I'm not seeing anybody indicating otherwise. So up to the board. I'm happy to entertain the motion as provided there, or if we think that Dr. Simpson already has the authority that he needs, we can just let him go ahead. I thought it might be a little clearer just to go and have a motion there that sort of laid it out, but whatever the board feels.
I'll jump in. So I absolutely trust Dr. Simpson and his team to make decisions. I have seen not only the staff, but the students at Ambrose step up and make decisions and follow the plans that the administration has put in place. And I fully believe that the other staff will as well. But I agree with you, that's probably clearer if we have the motions. I'm happy to move that the Webster Groves School District Board of Education approves a return to in-person learning 5 days per week for kindergarten through second grade students currently in the responsive learning plan. Further, that the board approves a return to in-person learning for students currently in the responsive learning plan in grades 3 through 12, as soon as Dr. Simpson believes this is appropriate with no further board action required. Should Dr. Simpson believe that a change to any return plan is subsequently required, the board further authorizes Dr. Simpson to take actions he believes to be in the best interest of the district and to report back to the board at the subsequent next scheduled board meeting.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion about the motion before we vote?
I giving him the flexibility. I think he'll need that flexibility to just be able to kind of move.
Okay.
Instead of waiting to get us together. I trust them as well. And I think he'll need that flexibility.
Thank you.
Okay, I see no further discussion, in which case all those in favor of the motion as proposed and seconded, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Simpson, move forward boldly.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your support. And again, kudos to the people all around me who are making this happen, and the administrators and the teachers and the staff. So we're excited for kids to be back and to care for them as they need. And to support our kids in the virtual learning environment and continue to improve that space as well.
No, that's great. Look forward to having as many of our children back in the classrooms as soon as we can do it. So thank you very much. Okay, we'll now move to the consent agenda. If somebody who will make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll motion to approve the consent agenda items 5.02, minutes for the following Board of Education meeting, September 10, 2020, 5.03, the personnel report, 5.04, the check registers.
Have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor of the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you very much. And I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you very much. My apologies to everybody for all of the problems that we had with the YouTube going on. Thank you very much to our technical team for eventually getting it back. And thank you very much to everybody who watched and who worked their way through all of the technical problems we were having. Certainly appreciate this level of community interest in what is obviously a very important set of decisions for all of our children. So thank you very much and good evening.